In this video, I'll be taking you through the top 7 best Linux distros engineered specifically for software developers and programmers in 2025. These 7 distros are powerful, purpose-built systems that are built to supercharge programming and make you even more productive at software development. From a cutting-edge distro that's practically from the future to a super premium distribution that you won't even believe is Linux. From an immutable distro that's literally built from a single file of code to a distro that's actually 5 distros packed in one. Yeah, we're gonna go crazy here. And I understand that not all developers need the same system, so the list covers everyone, from front-end to back-end, beginner to expert. I've personally set up full-fledged desktop environments from Flutter to automation servers on so many distros, and I'm bringing you the top 7 best battle-tested distros that truly stand out for developers. Trust me, one of these 7 is going to be our next daily driver. Let's jump right in. Alright, let's start this list off with an absolute banger. While there is no shortage of powerful Linux distros for software developers, I have found one that is the most well-rounded and the most pragmatic of all. Zorin OS is a beautiful, polished and familiar experience that makes you go wow. The first thing you notice is just how stunning it is. The desktop design is clean and the whole system just feels premium right out of the box. And because the user interface is familiar to everybody, it makes it very easy for Windows users to switch to Linux. This is built on the rock-solid Ubuntu LTS foundation. For developers, this is a great combo. You get the legendary stability, the massive software library, and the unparalleled community support of Ubuntu, but all wrapped in a much more refined and thoughtfully designed user interface. In Linux, there is a bit of complexity about software packages. We have Flatpaks, we have snaps, we have app images, .deb packages, and whatnot. Zorin OS simplifies the whole thing by just giving you all the package formats, but in an organized and extremely simple app store. Find the software you want to install, click on this drop down and select it in the format you want. That's it. For example, setting up a development environment is incredibly straightforward. To get Flutter running, I just open the software store, search for it and VS Code and install them. No commands, no manual downloads. I didn't even have to open the terminal. This removes that unnecessary friction of environment setup, letting you focus on coding instead of configuration. This streamlined setup process is a huge benefit, especially for developers new to Linux. Zorin also makes everyday computing easier with some really cool enhanced tools. For example, the Zorin Connect app seamlessly pairs your smartphone, letting you sync your clipboard, reply to a message from your computer, and even remote control your PC from your phone. Additionally, the Zorin Appearance app lets you instantly tweak the desktop with preset layouts. So if you're coming from Windows or macOS or just prefer traditional GNOME feel, there is a layout for you. Under the hood, Zorin OS gives you the kind of stability and consistency that developers want and need. Thanks to its Ubuntu LTS base, you get an environment that stays rock solid for years. The underlying Ubuntu base is very conservative with updates, and they are pushed only after extensive testing. This computing environment is kept very steady so that you can focus entirely on building and not babysitting or housekeeping your OS. The thing about Zorin OS is, it nails that rare balance between beauty and brains. It gives developers a sleek, distraction-free computing environment. If you want a Linux distro that looks and feels premium and lets you dive straight into your coding, this is it. Next up on the list, we have Fedora Silverblue, and this is easily the most impressive distro on this list. This belongs to a new kind of operating systems family known as Immutable distros. Fedora Silverblue is built on a revolutionary idea. The main operating system is kept read-only always. It's locked down, untouchable, immutable, so it never breaks. So how do you get any work done here? With containers. This is an absolute killer feature for developers. Using tools like Toolbox or DistroBox, you can spin up isolated environments for your projects. You can have an Ubuntu container for work and an Arch Linux container for personal projects, all running on the same pristine, untouchable host. It's an insanely powerful and clean way to work. Your GUI apps like VS Code or your browser are installed as sandboxed Flatpaks, keeping them completely separate from the core system and each other. So how does this magic actually work? Let's start with Toolbox, which comes pre-installed. You pop open a terminal and create your first container. Now, this is not a heavy virtual machine. It's a lightweight, mutable Fedora environment that lives inside your unbreakable host. Once you Toolbox enter, you're in a familiar space where you can use DNF to install all your tools, Python, Node.js, compilers, you name it. without ever touching the base OS. All your project files in your home directory are seamlessly available inside. So your Flatpak VS Code can talk to the tools in the container and you can install multiple of these for different projects. But then you can take this even further with DistroBox. It lets you create containers for different distros like Ubuntu for one project and Arch Linux for another to access the AUR. Since they run side by side, their tools will never conflict, ending dependency hell for good. It's a clean, powerful workflow. And system updates are atomic. Basically, when you hit update, a new OS image is downloaded in the background and you just reboot into it. If an update breaks a driver or causes any issues, you just select the previous working version from the boot menu and you're instantly rolled back. It's like having a time machine for your entire OS. Let that sink in. And there are times when you absolutely need to install some software directly onto the system. You can do that using the rpm os tree command, which uses the ingenious layering technique to install software directly onto the system. Now this is a different way of thinking. It forces you to be disciplined and embrace containers. Yes, there is a learning curve. You have to learn how to work with containers. It is a paradigm shift. And you have to learn a few commands here and there. For that, you can check out the detailed video that I did on Fedora Silverblue. But the payoff is a level of stability and reproducibility that is just not possible on a traditional operating system. At number 5, we have the undisputed king of desktop Linux, Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the world's most popular Linux distro, and rightly so. It strongly emphasizes user-friendliness and reliability, and it's one of the simplest as well as most powerful Linux distros out there. This is so good that hundreds of other distributions are built on top of this. For coding and development work, Ubuntu comes with some massive benefits. The first one being vast and accessible software ecosystem. As the most popular Linux distribution, Ubuntu gets first-class support from software developers and vendors. Nearly every development tool, library, framework, and application is packaged for Ubuntu primarily. Then, Ubuntu gives us its universal packaging format called Snaps, which, although controversial, receive huge backing from some of the biggest players. Google, JetBrains, Microsoft, Mozilla, and many other big names bring their software to Linux officially in Snap format. Visual Studio Code, IntelliJ IDEA, Google Cloud CLI, Android Studio, Flutter, .NET Core, PowerShell, and many other coding essentials are basically one-click installs from the App Center here. This is a very huge advantage for software developers. Another important advantage here is the massive community. Ubuntu is so widely used and there's such good documentation that any issues you might face, any questions you might have, the solution is just a web search away. Then, the long-term support releases are non-negotiable for professional work, offering a stable platform for 5 long years, so you can build without disruptive updates. And since it dominates the cloud, the development environment can mirror production, killing it works on my machine bugs. Ubuntu is the de facto industry standard, and running it is a huge advantage. I have a very special place for Ubuntu in my heart. I started my Linux journey with Ubuntu 14.0 for LTS. It had Unity desktop back then and it has since been the trusty old hammer in my toolbox. The beauty of Ubuntu is in its simplicity. It's one distro that just works right out of the box. You can't go wrong with this one, and for software developers, I highly recommend this. By the way, if you haven't already, check out my course Linux Mastery Express. I've designed this course to level up your Linux skills very quickly. With this course, you'll get so comfortable using the terminal commands that your friends will think you're a Linux wizard. You'll get perfect with the most used, most useful commands and also learn advanced things like using the V-editor and shell scripting as well. Linux Mastery Express, link in the description, do check it out. Number 4 on the list, we have the bleeding edge Endeavour OS. Endeavour OS is an Arch-based Linux distro, but it has one huge advantage over Arch Linux: simple and straightforward graphical installer. Yeah, Endeavour OS makes it trivial to get started with Arch Linux. Now, Arch Linux is a bleeding edge Linux distro that always stays at the forefront of technology. You get the latest of everything, the new features, the new tech, everything. But Arch Linux is famously explicit to install. You need to have a black belt in Linux to even just install Arch Linux, although now that has improved significantly. Endeavour OS gets all Arch benefits minus the installation hassle. If you're a corporate programmer, you build things, then Ubuntu is great, yeah. But for the tinkerer, the tweaker, the one who is driven to try out new tech, you can see how Endeavour OS is just right. The killer feature, the one that makes Arch-based distros so addictive, is the Arch User Repository, or the AUR. This isn't just a software store, it's a colossal community-powered library with scripts to build and install almost any piece of software you can imagine. If a software was made for Linux, it will be available here. From the most obscure command line tool to the absolute latest beta of your favorite IDE. For a developer, this is pure gold, giving you instant access to a universe of tools that you just won't find in the official channels of other distros. This is how you get instant access to software that's usually a hassle to install, like beta versions of API clients like Postman, Docker Desktop, or even specific version managers like NVM, all with a single command. With EndeavourOS, what you get out of the box is an exceptionally clean, bloat-free system with none of the pre-installed fluff you find everywhere else. For a developer, this is the ultimate blank canvas, giving you total control to build a lean, mean development machine with only the tools you choose for your workflow. That means every drop of your system's performance goes directly into compiling your code and running your applications, not wasted on background processes you don't even need. For me, using EndeavourOS just feels like coming home. I love being on the bleeding edge. It's this lean, mean sports car of a system that's insanely fast because there's absolutely no unnecessary baggage weighing it down. And that moment you realize you can install anything from the AUR with a single command, no more hunting for PPAs or dealing with bulky snaps, that feeling is just pure freedom. This isn't just an OS you use, it's this project that you build into your perfect personalized development machine, and I absolutely love it for that. Alright, next up we are talking about the undisputed grandfather of stability, Debian Stable. Debian Stable is the absolute height of stability, reliability, and that rock solid dependability as far as operating systems go. Notice how I didn't say Linux distros, I said operating systems. Yeah, in this matter, nothing beats Debian Stable. In fact, this is one of the biggest selling points of Debian, and if you resonate with it, you'll never use anything else. Debian is very methodical in testing and releasing packages and updates. Everything in Debian goes through extensive testing, and for a developer, this is big. It means you can set up your development environment and literally forget about it, knowing that an update isn't going to randomly break your Python version and send you down a debugging rabbit hole that you don't have time for. Debian Stable is the ultimate install once and forget system. With Debian, you never have to babysit your computer. On top of that, Debian gives you access to one of the largest software libraries on the planet, with over 64,000 packages ready to go. For a developer, this is a massive advantage. You can sudo apt install pretty much any open source tool, compiler, or library you can think of right from the official repositories. And these are all extremely well tested, so when you install something, you can be sure that it's going to work without any issues. Now, because stability and reliability are extremely important for Debian and its extensive testing is a very thorough process, Debian Stable tends to lag significantly behind in terms of version numbers compared to other distros. Now, this is a double-edged sword. While this definitely brings in unprecedented stability, it also means that you are using very old packages, and when I say very old, I mean ancient. Yeah, you have to keep this thing in mind. For software developers who need a server-grade, set-it-and-forget-it platform, for things like maybe backend development, Debian is the undisputed king. Yeah, there are trade-offs. You will be using older software, but then choosing Debian isn't about chasing the newest of everything. Debian is boring. It is. I'll not sugarcoat it. And it's a deliberate choice you make for unmatched dependability and that freedom to just focus on your work without having to worry about anything else. On number 2, we have a big one. Fedora Workstation is consistently considered as one of the top choices for software developers and programmers because it balances cutting-edge technologies with stability and polish in a way that no other distro does. Fedora is a powerful community-supported Linux distribution backed by Red Hat. Many people consider this the absolute best Linux distro for programmers because it has some solid advantages. The problem with other distros like Debian is it's too old and nobody wants to be in 2010 in 2025. On the other hand, Arch Linux is just too bleeding edge. I want to focus on my code, not focus on what's deprecated in a new version of library that's updated pretty much every single day. Fedora brings balance to the force. Fedora has a life cycle of 13 months with a new version of Fedora rolling out every 6 months. Not long, not too short. With 13 months of support, most people will find it a great balance to start working on a project and maybe even finish that project in the meantime. But where Fedora really shines for developers is its developer tools. Its 6-month release cycle means you always have fresh but not dangerously new versions of essential tools like GCC, Python and Go, all tested with enterprise-grade standards. And let's talk containers. Fedora treats Podman as a first-class citizen, giving you a more secure, modern and daemonless alternative to Docker right out of the box. You combine that with a pure distraction-free GNOME desktop and you get a system that feels like it was explicitly built by developers for developers to get serious work done. I also feel that software repositories of Fedora are developer-centric. There have been times where I have not found particular software, let's say some multimedia tool in Fedora repositories. But it has never happened when I was trying to install any development tool. It's all there. Fedora uses the DNF package manager and it's very harmonious in handling package installs. In addition, we also get full Flatpak support here, so you can install anything you want directly from Flathub. For me, using Fedora is all about getting work done. It's this clean, professional environment that hits the sweet spot. I'm not stuck in the last decade like with Debian, but I'm also not constantly babysitting my OS like you have to do with Arch. But I do get newer versions of software and tech. It's that refreshing balance of modern tools and enterprise-grade stability that just lets you focus on your code, and for a professional developer, I feel that that's everything. Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, uses Fedora. What more needs to be said, huh? And of course, before we unveil the top dog on this list, we have to give a massive shout out to some other legends in the game that missed out from this video by a tiny margin. First up, Linux Mint, the absolute champion of It Just Works, giving you that rock-solid Ubuntu base with a refined, no-nonsense Cinnamon desktop for a purely pragmatic and distraction-free experience. I love this one personally. Then there's the professional choice, OpenSUSE, which lets you pick your poison. Go with Leap for server-grade stability that rivals Debian, or ride the current with Tumbleweed, a rolling release exactly like Arch, and this is so well tested it redefines what a bleeding-edge distro can be. And finally, for the ultimate purist, we have Arch Linux itself. Now, this is not just an OS, but a rite of passage that forces you to build your system from the ground up, giving you an unparalleled understanding of how Linux truly works. This is an absolute learning experience. Alright, for the grand finale, we have NixOS on the number 1 spot. Now, NixOS is unlike anything you have ever seen. This is some next level stuff. Let's dive in. NixOS is a revolutionary operating system built on a simple, earth-shattering idea. What if you could build your entire system, every package, every setting, every dot file, from a single file of code? The configuration.nix file here contains all the configurations of your system, all the mounted partitions, your bootloader preferences, all the packages you have installed, your desktop environment, your settings, and even the preferences and changes you have made. This file explicitly describes your system to a very deep level. And the cool thing is, you can use this configuration file to create an exact replica of your system on other computers as well as on your own computer. This gives you a truly reproducible, unbreakable, and perfectly configured system that you can share, version control, and roll back instantly. And this lets entire development teams to be on the exact identical system that has all the same versions of software, same versions of libraries, and all that stuff. It absolutely solves the "but it works on my computer" issue once and for all. Dependency hell is another huge problem that developers face, and NixOS solves this as well. NixOS allows you to install multiple versions of the same tool, same library on your system, and both of these will coexist perfectly harmoniously. All the packages are stored in /nix/store here, and here each and every one of these packages lives in a cryptographically signed isolation. They never interact with each other. NixOS also uses atomic updates, so things almost never break here. They can never break. When you update your system, if everything is downloaded and installed properly, NixOS creates a new generation and the OS boots into this new system after reboot. It is discarded if something goes wrong. And if you don't like something, you can easily roll back into the old generation because that generation is defined in the configuration.nix file in its entirety. That declaring of the entire system in a single file might seem simple, but it is powerful beyond measure. And let's talk about the massive software repositories with more than 80,000 packages. So how do you actually install stuff? Forget everything you know about apt or DNF. On NixOS, you don't just install software, you declare it into existence. You simply open the configuration.nix file, add the name of the package you want to the list, and run a single command, sudo nixos rebuild switch. Bam! NixOS generates a new version of your entire system with that package perfectly integrated. And for tools that you want to try out without touching the sacred config file, yes sir, you can do that too. You can install them directly to your user profile with nixenv. No sudo required. It's your own private sandbox set of tools that leaves the core system absolutely pristine. I felt that NixOS has a steep learning curve. I'm 30 years old, and when I tried NixOS, it was absolutely unlike anything I had used. The learning curve was definitely steep. To start using this system to its fullest extent, apart from learning some NixOS specific commands, you also have to have a good understanding of the Nix language that is used to define the configuration file here. Although it's not that hard, it's a thing you have to learn. And the biggest thing is, you can't just dabble with NixOS. Use the things that you want and don't use the things that you don't want. No, it doesn't work like that. If you want to use Nix, you have to go all in. Yeah, NixOS is not for everybody. For most people, other entries on this list will be much better suited. But if you make the commitment, NixOS is going to completely change the game. If you take the time to learn this through, you will never go back to anything else. NixOS has a lot more going for it, and if you're interested, you can check out my video of NixOS Deep Dive, where we see how amazing this distro actually is. All in all, for the developer willing to take the plunge, NixOS isn't just the best choice, it's the last OS you'll ever need. But you got to be willing to learn a thing or two here. There you have it, the top 7 best Linux distros for developers in 2025. Whether you want bleeding edge tech, rock solid stability, or a completely new way of working, there's a distro here for you. Each one is a powerful beast in its own way, built to supercharge your workflow and get you coding faster. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it useful, definitely consider subscribing to the channel and also leave me a big thumbs up. And if you're interested in leveling up your Linux skills, the link to my course Linux Mastery Express is given in the description below. It's designed to teach you Linux and take you from zero to hero within the shortest amount of time possible. You'll be using Linux like a pro within a matter of hours. So definitely check that out. Next up, check out the top 5 hottest lightweight Linux distros for hyper performance in 2025. It's got some really cool ones, so definitely don't miss that. Alright, this is Linux Techs signing out.